You are still in your own world, Earth. The year is 2071.
The Time Travelers. Preston Foster, Philip Carey, Mary Anders, John Hoyt, and Dennis Patrick take you into a world beyond belief, where a season's growth can be condensed into seconds. Variable light becomes a seductive melodic symphony, and the Lumicord, the love machine, gives sensuous stimulation that conditions both men and women to a fuller, richer life of love. This is the world of the force field barrier, the laser pulse beam, the vibratransporter, and the Alpha Centauri starship. In the year 2071, scientific superbrains manufacture almost human robots, whole armies of androids that fight off the feared mutants.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
They're gonna kiss me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, doctor, help me!
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that's...
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're gonna make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first!
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
Welcome to another episode of the American International Podcast. I'm Jeff Markin.
And I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And on this episode, we will be taking a look at The Time Travelers from 1964.
I was really excited to see this movie because I love time travel. And any science fiction movie with that device in it is something I'm interested in. The Time Travelers was directed by Ib Melchior, who also wrote the screenplay from his story that also came from David L. Hewitt. And it was produced by Bill Redlin and Samuel Z. Arkoff.
This movie has a really large cast of characters. Among them, and the feature players, would be Preston Foster as Dr. Erik von Steiner, Philip Carey as Steve Connors.
Can I just interject here? I love Philip Carey. If anyone was ever a fan of One Life to Live, he's Asa Buchanan. So seeing him in this movie in a non-Asa Buchanan role was super exciting for me. I know that doesn't mean anything to you, but he was this larger-than-life Southern cowboy character on that show. So knowing that he was in this movie made me want to see it even more.
Mary Anders as Carol White, John Hoyt as Varno, Dennis Patrick as Councilman Willard, Joan Woodbury in what would turn out to be her final role as Gadra, Delores Wells as Reenaa.
This was the only lead film role for Delores Wells, who was the Playboy Playmate of the Month for June 1960.
And character actor Steve Franken as Danny McKee.
Ugh. That's all I'll say about that right now.
So the film starts out, and we're in some sort of a lab, and because this is called The Time Travelers, we can assume it's a time travel experiment or something going on with exploring the continuum of time and space.
They're not super specific about what they're doing. I wrote down a lot of vague descriptions. Wikipedia says they're testing their time viewing device, where they're trying to get a picture in this window so that they can do their time travel thingy.
And it looks like a big monitor to us, but it's a window. And they're going through all their scientific gibberish, and we aren't really following what's going on because we're not scientists, and only they and Ib Melchior knows for sure what they're talking about.
No, but dials are turned and buttons are pressed and, levels are adjusted. It could be anything. They could be sitting anywhere doing anything right now. It's, just giving something more power and seeing what the results are after that.
So we should say that the characters in the room right now are Dr. Steiner, Steve Connors, and Carol White.
Yeah, the two men are doctors, and Carol seems to be some sort of assistant who's, just helping to turn the knobs and flip the switches and everything.
But then enter Danny McKee.
Ugh. I'm sorry. He comes in just to be obnoxious. At first I thought he was in there to kind of hit on Carol because he's like hovering over her. And he's talking some nonsense about how he got in trouble because he let them use too much power before and now they're doing it again. And she's like, well, yeah, but just a minute.
And he seems to be in the film as a source of comic relief.
Oh, yeah, he definitely is.
But he's just kind of obnoxious.
It just falls flat every time. We'll get there.
So while he's there, they're going to set phase 2, which is to set the time selector to 6 hours in the future.
Yeah, I guess that's they get a picture in the window at this point, right? Where they can see a different point on campus. And they want to jump ahead 6 hours in the future and see what happens. It doesn't seem like they're sending somebody 6 hours ahead in time.
The window is looking 6 hours ahead in time.
Yeah.
So there's a person in the window. He says, I'll see you day after tomorrow or day before yesterday or something like that.
Yeah. See you in the past or future. Who knows? They seem pretty stressed out at this point. At one point, Carol is like crossing her fingers, like in the hopes that this will work.
And everything just starts to go kind of haywire. We see the instruments and they say past and future and what looks like just regular rulers on the top and bottom.
Let's go 6 inches into the future.
And while they're turning knobs and trying to gain control of whatever's going wrong, there's like a series of shadows going by and it kind of looks like the film is flickering.
Yeah, and then Dr. Connors decides that he's going to go for broke here and go 100,000 years into the future.
He kind of sets it in the future and then tries to dial it back.
Yeah, but why 100,000? Why not just tomorrow?
Well, it's just a window, so it shouldn't...
Right, I know, but this is scientific overkill. Like, if I can't go 6 hours, then I'm going to go 100,000 years. Like, is there no gradation in between? Anyway.
So when everything calms down, they look through that window and what they see is kind of a barren wasteland. It's very rocky and they describe it as almost prehistoric.
Yeah, but it's really Barstow, California. It's just in the mountains and the hills.
And according to their gauges, they are looking 170 years into the future.
Yes, the futuristic 2071, because this actually takes place in 1964.
So they're still looking at their monitors and their gauges and trying to figure out what's going on. And Danny goes up to the window and notices that it looks like more than just a picture. That
yeah, it's not a screen anymore.
It's not. It's a window, and he actually can put his hand through it and tries to get the attention of the doctors so he can show them what he can do with his window.
Yeah, and as they've been doing like all this time, they're like, not now, Danny, we're busy. But that just leads him to decide to hop through it. And not only does he hop through it, he just kind of takes off.
Yeah, it's interesting when he hops through the window because he just runs to the side off screen, and then he comes back and it's obviously a projection now.
This movie didn't have a huge budget.
It was an interesting way of handling the situation for the budget.
Yeah, I think it looks fine. It's
it
1964.
Works.
It's fine. So he kind of waves at them. They yell at him to come back, but he can't hear them. And so instead of trying to come back or getting further instructions, he just runs away.
So they realize somebody has to go after him, and Dr.
Why?
Steiner is going to because he's the senior scientist and has a beard.
I didn't know that's how they rank scientists. Like, whoever's beard is the most magnificent gets to call the shots. So that's why women could never succeed back then. No beard, no fellowship. Sorry.
Very true. So Dr. Steiner goes through. The picture starts destabilizing.
Yeah, so they realize it's now or never to get Danny back. I say never.
And they see these other beings running through across the screen.
Yeah, they're all, they kind of look like cavemen, but they're bald and they're huge and they're angry.
Yeah, they're wearing like furry clothes.
Loincloth, etc.
What clothes they are wearing.
Yeah.
So Connors goes through as well because he wants to make sure his colleagues are safe. So Carol White is now alone in the lab.
Poor thing. Yeah, this is like a guy thing. Like, there's an adventure. Let's go have it. And nobody, communicates like, hey, wait here. In case we run into problems, somebody should stay here. So they're all gone and she can't see anything. And then 2 mutants, and these are mutants, come to the window. And they don't want to...
Yeah, so we know that this window does work both ways. So Danny could have come back.
Yeah, if he wanted to. Everybody could have come back if they wanted to.
Yeah, everybody should have come back.
So she's confronted with these mutants that are like rapidly approaching her. And the only weapon she has is a fire extinguisher, which she deploys by, she sprays them with, what's in a fire extinguisher? I have no idea.
Foam.
White gunk. She sprays them with that, and then they're like all upset, and they fall away. And then so she decides that something has to be done because it's a two-way window.
And the window is destabilizing again. It kind of looks like old television static.
Right, yeah. Like something bad is about to happen, and she's the only one in the lab.
And she can't yell out to them because they can't hear her. So she goes to the window herself so she can yell out and get everybody's attention and say, come back before this thing collapses.
She has to holler at them like mom calling kids home from, playing all day. They hear her. Well, the scientists hear her. We don't know where Danny is at this point. So Dr. Von Steiner and Dr. Connors hear her. And so they do come back. And just as they're standing there, the picture evaporates. They're stuck.
The window collapses and they all just stare in disbelief for a moment.
Like, who could have guessed that would happen?
And like, well, now what are we going to do? We are 107 years into our future. And there doesn't appear to be any way to get back.
There's no civilization here. So what's going to happen?
We're going to have to befriend mutants or something.
Well, no, they're not going to befriend mutants. They're going to run away from mutants because they start getting chased right now.
They do. And they use handheld camera for this chase scene.
It goes on pretty long, but it's a good scene.
Yeah, you're with the characters at this point. You're following them. And it's not like some later scenes that go on too long.
A lot of scenes go on too long here. There is some overhead shot, too, of them like running through a valley. So basically it's just run. They're trying to get away from these mutants. Somehow Carol in her high heels and her pencil skirt manages to run just as fast as everyone else. So they're still in the lead.
They go around a corner and Danny yells out to them that he's got plenty of ammo, so they should join him and grab some.
Yeah, ammo means rocks. And they're going to be a good old-fashioned rock fight.
So they load up with as many rocks as they can and start throwing them at the mutants as they get too close, but they're still on the run.
And Danny says he knows there's a cave up ahead, and they can go there for shelter and probably better defensive position. So the chase continues onto the cave. They have enough time once in the cave to kind of gather up some more rocks to kind of defend themselves.
Which is good because now they're kind of cornered.
Yeah. What's your next plan? There isn't one. The mutants come up to the mouth of the cave, and they start throwing rocks. But the mutants can't come in, and the rocks don't go out. They just bounce off the opening of the cave.
The two mutants kind of just freeze.
Yeah, they get zapped or something, and they're unable to move. They're unable to fight anymore. So what the heck's up with that? They go investigate.
Well, the mutants do free themselves and take off.
Yeah, so there's something there. They go to investigate what, that could be. Danny, being the human guinea pig here, puts his hand on it and gets a little shock.
Because if there's one thing he knows, it's what an electric shock feels like.
Yeah, he's like an electrician or, what is that, a gaffer? I mean, he seems like a low-level functionary here, but he does have some electrical knowledge, I guess. Not that we'll ever use it again.
And then some beings show up. And they've got these weirdly unusual faces in that instead of a nose and mouth, they just have kind of a hole.
Right. But they do have very pretty eyes. They have a mouth hole, lovely eyes. They have like breastplates on with the nipples blurred out and like a skirt or something.
But they are petite.
Yes. Yeah. And then there's someone else there. It's Gadra.
And she says that these beings are androids.
Gadra wants them to come with. They ask, well, how do we know we can trust you? And she says, well, you can't, which I think is the perfect answer. Anytime you're trying to convince somebody, why you can't trust me, but, you should anyways. I mean, that sort of makes you seem honest.
Mm-hmm. I'm behaving differently than the mutants, so that should work in my favor.
Yeah, I have a snazzy jumpsuit, so I'm clean. I'm reasonably intelligent. So since the cave is there's no exit to the cave and they can't go back out through the force field, where are they going to go? Yeah, she has one of the androids kind of laser a hole in the cave, which she kind of woman-splains lasering to them. They're scientists, but she explains how lasers work to them.
Well, it's not just a laser. It bores a hole. It opens a portal.
Right. But she calls it a laser, so... And they're like, yeah, we get it. We're not stupid. They go through the hole in the wall, and then magically the android is able to close it back up again. So it's like a
portal.
Yeah, this is the take me to your leader part of the movie. She takes them to the council chambers where Dr. Varno is in session, I guess, so that they can discuss what's going on.
And they explain their plight, and they confirm that it is the year 2071. And they learn the history of the world since 1964.
Yeah, some bad stuff happened, obviously.
And the end of the world came, and it was due to man's own folly.
Yeah, and if you made this movie today, it would probably be climate change, maybe the political stuff, but here it's what was considered to be the biggest threat at the time. It's nuclear weapons.
Big bombs, yeah.
So we see a lot of stock footage of mushroom clouds and explosions and basically turning the land into a wasteland.
And we learn that Varno and these people are descendants of the scientists and are the last normal humans. The rest of them are the mutants outside.
Yeah, they're the ones that got away in time to escape, I guess, radiation poisoning, genetic mutation, all those bad things.
And we also learn that the Earth is doomed. I don't think they really say why.
Well, if everything looks like Barstow, then there's no cropland, there's no fresh water. There's just nothing for them there. Just cool jumpsuits.
But they do have a plan. Yeah. They have found an Earth-like planet. It's only 25,000 billion miles from Earth.
Yeah. And
Alpha Centauri.
Yeah, and I looked that up. That is actually a scientifically okay way to express that. It seems a little scientifically illiterate, but it's true. That's how far away it is. We see their rocket ship, which they're prepping for the journey. It seems pretty small. It just seems like one of those test rockets that you fly around just to prove that you can do it. But apparently the whole society's getting in there. All their people, all their androids, all that they need for sustenance is all going in there.
And they'll be using suspended animations, so it's not like they'll be running around the ship and having to eat the whole way there, because 25,000 billion miles is a lot of meals.
Yeah. I guess they'll just be in like a space pod with catheters and IVs. Yeah. But in the midst of all this explaining what's happening, there's an explosion. There's a damage to one of the androids, and that must be repaired immediately because every android is precious to them.
And so we as an audience get to see the android lab and its process for a very long time.
Yeah, this is just silly business that they have going on. Their little android factory. I mean, it could just as well be Santa's workshop with elves building toys.
Well, the music would be appropriate. They use this really quirky music that's playing.
It's, like kiddie music.
And to show this is fun and
whimsical.
Yeah, whimsical. So we see things like, we see androids in various states of repair, and it works like an assembly line. We see what looks like a large grill where they're cooking eyes, and then they cool them off in some sort of liquid and stick them in android heads.
Yeah, and there's a woman there who's like sorting them, I guess, to get the same color in each. Like, we don't want a brown eye and a green eye put together. So she sorts the eyes and then plugs them into the heads, and then I guess activates them because she runs her hand over.
Well, she's got like a control box, so she's just like kind of like giving it energy, I think, to make sure that it's working okay.
Right, but at one point she runs her hand over the eyelids of this android that she just eyeballed, and then it opens its eyes and starts blinking.
We see a station that is just working on hands. We see another station where they're using blowtorches on torsos. And Varno and our heroes enter, and they're discussing that they will be using suspended animation to travel to Alpha Centauri, and that they need to leave before the mutants take over. And the mutants are fighting them because they want this group's food and supplies.
Yeah, well, that makes perfect sense. They don't want to starve any more than the colonists do.
And they explain that the androids are kind of their defense mechanism against the mutants. They're kind of soldiers that work for them and defend the colony. And we see an android that was damaged, I think, in the explosion, and they have to remove its head. So they demagnetize it and remove its head. It's kind of like a magic trick where you see the head come off and then everybody just stares. And not much happening, but this guy just takes the head off and then puts it back.
Well, the thing about that is that the android walked up to the table, laid down, and then they took its head off. So it was kind of a neat trick.
Yeah, I'm sure it was amazing in 1964, and it's still effective today. Yeah. But they take their time doing it, And it just goes so long that you kind of forget that's what you're watching by the time you get to the end of it.
Yeah, because they have to unscrew like every screw one at a time to get that head off.
And if it was an actual magician performing it, at least he'd be talking the whole time. But this is just silence and everybody's just staring while this happens.
Yeah, there's a lot of this in this movie. Varno leads the scientists to something called the Starship Machine. But Danny wants to stay behind because he's noticed that this chick is eyeballing him. So this is an important character in the movie. This is Reenaa, who is the eyeball technician. And she sees Danny. And oh my goodness, sparks fly.
He goes over there basically to make a play for her, but she is very, very forward herself.
Yeah, she's not shy. She says, I like you. I know every man in this place, and they all suck, but you seem really cool and cute. He's not. But she is totally into him, and she wants him to come back to her cubicle later. She's afraid he won't be able to find it, though, so I guess she tells him to meet in the common area or something so that she can find him.
And he's a little stunned by her aggressiveness, but agrees.
Yeah. And she gives him a tray of eyeballs for some reason.
Which causes him to break the fourth wall.
Oh, I hate this part.
And he goes, holy McKee, I thought I was giving her the eye.
Yeah, it's just... And then he stares like bug-eyed into the camera. It's awful. And this whole part is... Ugh.
And he just wanders around the lab for a little bit, and he goes over to the hand station, and the hand attaches itself to his...
It gooses him. Let's just call it what it is. And then, another bug-eyed stare at the camera.
He turns around to look at it, and the hand gives him a tisk-tisk notion with his wagging its finger.
Yeah.
Like it was his fault.
Yeah, way to blame the victim.
So back with the scientists and Varno. Varno says that he can help them reopen the portal, but it will take months. And unfortunately, they only have about a month left before their trip to Alpha Centauri is scheduled. And it's very strict with the timing. All the calculations have been made, and they don't have any flexibility with this window for launching.
I understand that that's pretty standard with space missions. They have to go off at a certain time, a certain season, whatever. The sun has to be in a certain position relative to the Earth, whatever. They can't just whenever it, like you would a road trip.
And they say that the scientists are welcome to join them. And they are pleased because they don't want to stay in this rocky wasteland if they can't go back to their own time. So they agree to help out with any preparations in any way that they can.
Yeah, they kind of gave up on getting back to 1964 pretty darn easy.
And also on the council is Councilman Willard, and he does not want them to come along on this trip. So he starts working out the math on his own to show why extra passengers would be a detriment to the mission.
Yeah, this is our bad guy, and he's going to be the fly in the ointment for the rest of the movie. Anytime there's a conflict, it's because of him. So Varno takes the gang to his interplanetary TV room, where he's got a bunch of monitors, and they're all looking at different planets.
They've all got a piece of paper and a pencil, and they're all taking notes on what they're watching, and they're all watching all the celestial bodies.
Yeah, and it doesn't make sense that they're doing this because they're not going to any of these places.
It's 6 people sitting at a table with pens and paper taking notes on everything that's happening on these celestial bodies.
Right. And he starts talking about how...
6 people!
I know. Well, they have jobs for everyone, I guess. If you can't build an android, then you can take notes about Venus. I don't know. So for some reason, he starts going on about a moon that could be a place they could live. And what I call Titan, he calls Titan.
So Varno shows Dr. von Steiner his cosmic camera receiver.
Go ahead.
And he gets a transmission from Alpha Centauri 4. And it was sent 4.5 years ago. And it took that many light years for it to travel from there to here. Or there.
Yeah. And he opens up the screen. There's nothing there. Then all of a sudden there's a picture. It just sort of pops in. Which is pretty cool. I mean, given the budget and the time period.
And the movie wants us to think it's cool because they just zoom in on it and just stay there for a second. Because everything happens in this movie has to go on just a tad too long.
So that's a transition to I thought I'd already seen the worst part of this movie, but no. There is even more badness coming up. Reenaa, the eyeball chick, is performing with some weird instrument that looks like a kiddie toy.
Yeah, we're treated to a music and light show by Reenaa. And her hands are just hovering over this instrument, and it plays kind of like a theremin, but it looks like an electronic
piano
game.
Yeah, it does. Like Simon. It looks like a Simon, and it sounds like a theremin. And everyone's rapt by this music, especially Danny. I mean, obviously, he probably could care less about the music, but the Reenaa of it is very entrancing to him.
And Steve Collins and Carol White are in the room as well.
They're on sort of like a little reclining couch, and they're canoodling there.
Yeah, they're getting into the mood of the music.
Yeah, how would that get anyone into the mood? It's just so annoying.
So she stops playing, and she asks Danny if he enjoyed listening to her lunichord.
So that's the name of the instrument. It sounds just as dopey as it looks. I guess he nods, and he's like, yeah, well, yeah, he just wants to get in her space pants here.
And he kisses her.
Oh, yeah, and he kisses her. Steve and Carol are gone. They're at this, now we're at another kind of weird assembly line thing.
It's another workstation. There are androids and technicians.
Yeah, but for some reason there's like a row of 3 technicians that are just sort of like doing these weird little magic tricks.
And of note is the third one, who is taking these circular frames, giving it a little shake, and turning it into a square.
Yeah, this isn't just anybody. This is somebody.
This is Forrest J. Ackerman in his cameo.
So Forrest Ackerman was the editor of Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, and this was his first of many film cameos.
And putting 40 in your movie guaranteed you would get coverage in Famous Monsters of Filmland. So that was a good move on the part of the producers.
Other note is that he was Ib Melchior's literary agent as well. So that's probably how that, came about.
And in typical 40 fashion, he has one line and it needs to be a pun.
One of the scientists asks, is everything coming along okay?
And he says, getting everything squared away.
But
So Gadra is with Carol and Steve Connors and talking about some of their more scientific gibberish of what they're going to have to do to make this mission happen. And she mentions a photon.
And Carol's like, I know this is going to make me sound really dumb, but what's a photon? And she's right. It does make her sound really dumb. She works in a lab. I mean, this is like high school science stuff.
It is, but you know why it's there. It's because you have to describe it to the audience.
I know. You have to account for every educational level of interest here.
But it is extremely obnoxious.
And it's explained very condescendingly, too.
So while this is going on, suddenly an alarm sounds.
Yep, there's a mutant incursion in the colony.
And everybody splits up, and Carol gets lost and is running down another hallway alone.
Yeah, she seems to be like in the service access area, because there's nothing back there. It's just all a bunch of junk.
And she finds the intruder.
Right. She hears a noise. She knows that there's something there. She looks and she sees a pair of feet. And she,
No, there's no feet.
Well, there's something there.
She sees legs.
Yes. She sees a pair of legs. And she hears some rustling. And she basically, tries to get this person to come out.
And he does, and she's a little shocked when she sees that it's a man with no feet and kind of lobster claws for hands.
Yeah, but this is actually a real actor. His name is Peter Strudwick, and this is not makeup, it's not special effects, it's not prosthetics. This is his real appearance. So we're not making fun of him. This is just how he looks. He was later in a documentary called Born Different, talking about his life and accomplishments. He was born that way. His mother had rubella while she was pregnant with him. And he personally contacted Ib Melchior to get a role in this movie.
And it seems Ib was happy to oblige.
He grabs her by the arm, and she tells him she doesn't have to get aggressive. She's not going to hurt him. She's going to try and help him.
She realizes that he's mute, but through her communicating that he can understand what she's saying.
Right. And he's not really a threat. He's scared. He's alone. He seems more human than the other mutants.
He has hair on his head.
Yeah, that's what, well, I'm not saying that's all it takes, but, he has humanity to him, that the other ones are just sort of like animalistic. And he has a personality, I guess.
Councilman Willard arrives and immediately tries to kill this guy.
Yeah, Carol throws herself between the two of them, so he can't. Or if he does, he has to kill her too.
And then Carnos, Varno, and von Steiner arrive as well and inquire as to what is going on.
Yeah, somehow everyone got lost in the same place.
So Carol explains her position, and Willard explains his, and they all come to an uneasy agreement that this man, this half-mutant, will be taken care of in a civil manner. Right.
And we do see him later in the movie. Like, he gets a jumpsuit like everyone else, and he's doing something. I don't know. They're not too specific, but he is there.
So now we find ourselves in a greenhouse where the crew gets to sample artificial oranges.
They look like tangerines. Like, they grow really fast.
They're small.
Yeah, they grow from like berry to tangerine size in a matter of seconds.
And they're guaranteed non-sour.
Yeah, so they all start, snacking.
So a lot of these scenes in this movie are just to show the technology that this group of people has been able to develop.
Yeah, and they have leisure technology because Carol and Reenaa are having a spa day. They are all, by direction of, I guess by the producers, that they would all be naked here. There's no nudity, but they didn't want them in like bathing suits or anything. They wanted them to actually be nude, but strategically covered. So they're sunbathing, they're getting pampered here.
Yeah, Carol is standing and being blocked by these bars, and Reenaa is laying on her stomach.
Right, we can't see anything, but so they're talking about boys. This is not going to pass the Bechdel test.
Girl talk.
Yeah, it's girl talk and fashion and catching a man. Reenaa says that there's no time to waste. They need to have a population explosion as soon as they land. So she's willing to get knocked up right away, even if it has to be Danny.
Now there's a page from the council chambers, and von Steiner, Connors, Miss White, and Mr. McKee are all paged to go to the council chamber right away.
Yep, they need to know something. And what they need to know is there's no room on the rocket ship for them.
According to Councilman Willard's calculations, the group will have to be disinvited.
Yeah, that's really rude. You're not supposed to uninvite somebody after you've invited them. I mean, etiquette says that that's just not done. But they're not worried about etiquette. They're worried about their supplies and the weight ratio and fuel and all that jazz. And just adding 4 more bodies just throws it all off.
And so they have legitimate concern for themselves because
they can't stay.
Though they have to stay, but they can't survive if they do. They can't fend off the mutants by themselves, especially if all the androids are going to go.
Plus, all the time they wasted, they could have been trying to make that portal come back. So they've just been lounging around, enjoying
eating
themselves,
oranges and
sunbathing, and while they could have been doing science stuff. So now the race is on. We have like 1 month till launch, and so Varno and company are working on that, and von Steiner and the other science people have to work on rebuilding their lab in order to recreate the portal.
But Gadra does let them know that, for what it's worth, that she and Varno did vote for them to come along. And there was a vote in the council, and they still lost. So we know that Willard, and we don't know anybody else on this council, but I guess there's enough that 2-1 wasn't going to fly.
There was a filibuster. It lasted all night. They lost it. That's all that counts. Doesn't matter who voted for what.
So their only choice now is to rebuild this portal or die. Now, Reenaa asked Danny to take her back with him. She doesn't necessarily need to go to Alpha Centauri if Danny can't go along, so she would rather be with him.
Doesn't that throw off the weight ratio of the... in a
Carol
good way.
should be able to go at least.
Yeah. It should be like a 1-for-1 trade.
Yeah, because you can't just take somebody off either.
Yeah. It's all about balance. Danny, though, gets very reluctant here to...
commit.
He doesn't want to, make this a serious thing. He tells Reenaa he can't bring her back because he's already engaged to someone back home. And then he describes that person as 6 feet tall with lights and circuits. He's talking about a computer. He's just a big dork.
Now, Varno is helping the scientists work on their portal and is sharing some of their knowledge with them, hoping that it could be used to redevelop this portal.
Yeah, I guess he doesn't have any rocket stuff to do, so he can work with them.
So he wants to show him something, but he needs a guinea pig.
Wow, who could be the guinea pig in this group? I just don't know. Obviously, it's Danny.
So they call over Danny and they take him to a matter transmitter.
Yeah, he's game for this. They strap him down to this table.
It's a table, but it's like a
spit. It's like a rotisserie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they strap him to this rotisserie, spin him around.
Spouts out a couple of one-liners that are not memorable.
Or funny.
Von Steiner seems really amused when Danny's spinning on the spit. Tells him to have a nice trip, and he's just got this really cheesy grin on his face.
I mean, I would be amused if I could make him disappear, too.
And he disappears. And it's another magic trick because it's like the whole bottom of this device opens up and he's not there. Ta-da!
Unfortunately, though, for us, they bring him back. He appears in like a chamber across the room, and he's fine, still quippy.
Von Steiner puts his monocle in for a better look.
Well, that's what they're for. I mean, when your name's Von Steiner, you got a monocle.
So this is great technology, but unfortunately, it can't be used to travel unless the regenerator is already placed at the second position.
Right, and that's not something they can do because it doesn't exist.
They can't go someplace that they haven't already been.
Right. So, that's a quandary. And the way you solve something like that is with a montage. So now we have, basically, we're going to shoot through the 29 days here till launch.
We're showing signs and they say, work, work. Something says something hours to departure day, and the number just keeps going down.
Right, it goes from like 29 to 19 to 11, and everyone's working on their projects. The scientists are recreating their lab. It basically looks exactly as it did in 1964. And then everyone else is working on the launch.
Yeah, the ship is being prepared, the supplies are being loaded, and you see lines of humans and androids bringing on equipment and then coming back out and then going to get more equipment and putting it in and taking it out.
Like an ant colony. And so now we're at 2 days to go before launch, and they bring the rocket up to the launch pad where it was before when we first got here, but I guess they took it down. I don't know. But it needs to be like repositioned.
And while they're doing this, an alarm goes off again.
Ugh.
Mutants.
Always with the mutants. So everyone starts running around.
Where's Carol? And they ask Danny. Danny doesn't know. Wait a minute. He does. She's with Reenaa. Resting.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad that bit of continuity was established.
But the mutants all break in. There's a mutant attack. They have bats, axes, hammers.
Yeah, they're serious about this.
They were quick. The launch pad's on fire.
Well, the problem is that in order to transfer enough power to mission control, they had to take down all of the colony's defenses. And even knowing that they were going to do that, they're still surprised when there's this great mutant incursion. But it's bad this time. They don't just kind of get in, they all get in.
And they attack with bats, axes, and hammers.
They set stuff on fire.
The launch pad's on fire.
There's a mutant on fire. It's just chaos down here.
Now, a good portion of the colony has already been loaded on this rocket when it explodes.
Yeah, so this is like genocide here. This is really bad.
But Varno, Gadra, and Willard never boarded.
Right. Or Reenaa, because she's resting. So basically they get, the cast of the movie. Everyone else we don't care about, but any face that you recognize, minus Forrest J. Ackerman, is now kind of like fighting for their lives here.
So it's time to test their time portal.
Right. There's no better time than right now because it's...
it's now or never.
Yeah, it's do or die.
So they turn it on and they see the campus.
Yeah, and it's not the barren remains of the campus. It's a very lovely spring day. It
looks like it could be 1964.
It could be any time where things aren't bad.
Now, while they're doing this, right outside the door, that war with the mutants is still going on. The androids and mutants are fighting.
Yeah, they're trying to barricade the door, but it's not enough. The mutants break in, and there's a big scrum, and everybody's fighting right there, except for basically the scientists who are still working on opening the portal, and I think Varno and Gadra are trying to keep out of the fray.
Not so much Willard, because he gets his.
Oh, yeah. And true bad guy retribution, he's dealt with by the mutants.
So as the mutants break in, the group goes through the portal, and some mutants try to follow, and the portal collapses as they go through it.
But do we see them like sliced in half?
They just disappear with the portal.
I want to see them sliced in half. That would be cool. Okay, so now they're on campus, and I think the future people are kind of like just getting a good look at what's happening, but the scientists run off. They want to go to the lab and stop themselves from causing this whole mess in the first place.
So they head inside and find themselves there.
They've like duplicated themselves because they've come back before they initially left.
And we see everybody at the controls where they were at the beginning of the film, and Danny is already there, leaning against the wall. And the interesting thing is that nobody's moving.
Right. It seems like they're in suspended animation, but Danny notices that he actually is moving. It's just really super slow.
Like a hands on a clock.
Those move at regular time. They're not moving that fast. It's very, like infinitesimal changes. So they want to shut down the machines anyways, but they notice that they can't affect anything in the room. They can't move anything. They can't pick anything up. They can't turn a dial. They can't flip a switch.
Which begs the question,
how do they get in the building? Somehow they managed to go from outside to inside through a door which I would assume that even in 1964 would not be propped open. But somehow they got in the building. They're also able to breathe and move through the air, so they say they can't affect anything, but they obviously are affected and being affected.
So as they're trying to figure out what to do now, since they can't move anything, Varno and Gadra and the rest of their survivors appear in the room.
Yeah, I guess they followed them and also came through the propped open door. But they have a different problem.
They realize that the timing of all this is off and that they are aging several years for every minute. Now, the window portal is there, but it's dark. And Connors wants to take a look because time isn't moving at the same rate they are, that maybe it's just a dark flash and that they might be able to go through it. So he tests it and it works. He goes in.
He's gone for a long time, though, enough to make Carol kind of worried about, is he okay? But then he comes back and says, follow me.
Yeah, and tells them to hurry because we don't know how long this is going to last.
Yeah, how long till the aging stops.
And if they stay, they're going to die.
So everyone hops through the window. And as it turns out, they're in this idyllic, I guess, future.
It looks like a park.
Yeah, they went to some sort of national park. It's very lovely, great weather, there's running water. So wherever they are, it's great. You could live there. There are no mutants. There's the ability to grow food.
It's green.
There's oxygen. There's water. It's perfect. So they start wandering around. But
we as viewers are still in the lab, and time speeds up to normal time for us.
This is the point at the beginning of the movie where those shadows came across the screen. So after that, we kind of have done a whole 360 and started the movie again.
So we see them in montage format performing the operation again that we had seen at the beginning of the film that started the situation in the first place, with the controls going wonky and them trying to get control of everything again. And then we see basically the entire movie again.
But sped up. It
flashes.
Right, yeah. And it repeats over and over again. It gets faster and faster
just to make sure you get the point.
Right. And then they just show us a picture of the Andromeda Galaxy. The end.
And that's The Time Travelers from 1964.
Welcome back to the American International Podcast, where we are talking about The Time Travelers from 1964. The working title for this movie was Time Trap, which I find to be even better than Time Travelers, even though it is kind of a spoiler for the ending of the movie. The budget for this movie was $250,000, 1964 money, but even that was not enough for director Ib Melchior. He didn't get to do all the effects he wanted. I still think he did a pretty good job given the limitations he was under.
And a lot of the effects in this are actually literal magic tricks that are used to show this technology that this colony has devised.
They're in place of technology, even, like what we would do with CGI today, they are just doing with sleight of hand. AIP released this movie as a double feature with Atragon, and some cuts in the movie, the ending is where they find the idyllic future that they can all exist in. And if you saw this on Mystery Science Theater, that's the ending that you saw. But the original movie had the weird never-ending loop ending.
I think the never-ending loop ending plays better.
Yeah, it does.
It doesn't need to be there because that's all implied because you saw the circle yourself and you don't have to see it over and over again.
No, but now you have to think about, that's never-ending. There's never really a future.
Well, there is because they're not in a loop. There is a loop, but they got out of it because they went on.
Right. But
so there's a loop behind them that's going to go in a circle.
But aren't they all going to end up at the same place, just several days apart?
No, because they jumped through the window, went back, and jumped through the window again somewhere else. So there's a loop-to-loop, but they move forward.
Yeah, but don't they all do this? Doesn't every group of scientists do that? Or is it just... Because once they get to the end, they don't go anywhere. But someone is coming behind them. Another group is coming behind them of the same people.
But it's in time. So they've already done it at that particular time. When that particular time happens, every single moment, it's not going to be a bunch of people all showing up at the same place.
It's not cumulative. It's just...
Because it's just that moment in time.
Okay. If you say so. Many of the story elements, including the ending, were used in other productions. Producer Ray Dorn borrowed much of this movie for his Journey to the Center of Time in 1967, and Irwin Allen borrowed it for his TV series, The Time Tunnel. Ib Melchior wasn't too thrilled about that, but he didn't want to make waves, so he just let it slide.
I believe John Hoyt made a couple of appearances on The Time Tunnel.
Who's that?
Varno.
Oh. Ib Melchior used that plot himself when he wrote an episode of The Outer Limits called The Premonition in 1965, and it even showed up in an episode of Doctor Who in 2015.
It's become kind of a time travel cliche.
Right. A lot of time travel devices have to be reused. You can't start from scratch on a lot of these. There's a machine and it carries you forward, and there's a complication and you can't get back. Since time travel technology doesn't really exist, you kind of have to borrow from what's already out there.
Was this the first film that utilized this convention?
I don't know. I feel like maybe an episode of The Twilight Zone might have played with this same thing, but I can't say for sure.
Interestingly enough, most of this cast did not appear in any other AIP productions. John Hoyt as Varno notably appeared in Attack of the Puppet People and the previous year in X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes. And Delores Wells, who played Reenaa, appeared in Beach Party in 1963 and Muscle Beach Party and Bikini Beach earlier in 1964. But that's it.
Also, interestingly, the mutants were played by the Los Angeles Lakers. I guess they wanted really tall people to play these scary mutants.
And because this is 1964, they're all white.
Yeah. Everybody's white in the future, unfortunately. Yeah, that definitely would not fly today. Okay, now is the time when we apply our AIP rating system to the movie, where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and P is pathetic. I think we're probably of the same mind here, but
I'm not so sure.
Let's find out. What's your rating?
I'm going to give this one an I. Now, I was really, really excited to see this movie because I hadn't seen it before, but then I realized that I had seen it before and just blocked it out of my memory. It had been featured on the first Mystery Science Theater 3000 revival season, and I'd seen that. But even watching this again, I had no recollection of having seen it before. But I think that there's some good ideas here, and I think a lot of them are presented well, and it could be fun. There's just so much that doesn't fit. The music they're playing in the Android lab is horrible.
All the music is horrible.
It's just... It's really off-putting. I get what they were trying to do with this sequence and trying to make it fun and quirky, but it just goes on way too long. And there's too many sequences that go on just way too long. The stuff we want to see more is like the spa day.
No. They're funny.
This movie has a pretty good reputation among AIP movies, and some do consider it a favorite. I just felt that it was kind of a letdown because of the things that I mentioned. But I think there's a lot of potential, and I think there's some cool stuff in it, enough that I will give it an eye.
As for me, I also saw this on Mystery Science Theater, the revival on Netflix, and I was really excited that it was there. For one thing, my name is in the credits because I was a Kickstarter backer of this episode. And for another thing, like I said, I love time travel. We kind of rewatched that episode and we noticed that a lot of stuff was edited out. So they kind of, they made it 74 minutes long. They took away some of the runtime, which was probably good. They probably left in all the ridiculousness. But so that's one point for it for me. Another point for it is the time travel device, the inclusion of Philip Carey, who I just love, and the science stuff. Like, I think that part of the movie is, like you said, the part that we needed more of. It would be better if it was more specific. They were saying what they were doing and explaining the technology. And, there could be some human drama associated with that. The scientist versus mutant stuff was good. But the whole business, like anytime Steve Franken was on scene, it just takes you out of the movie. The breaking the fourth wall, his mugging to the camera, his goofy face, his stupid puns. It's just too much. It does almost rate a P for me, but because it does have some redeeming qualities, I'm going to give it an I as well.
Well, we agreed after all.
Told you.
I just want to say that taking out that montage at the end of the Mystery Science Theater 3000, I see why they did it for that episode. You don't necessarily want to hammer that into an audience who's there to watch a comedy show.
Yeah, it's not funny. It's called the unhappy ending.
But losing that I thought was the best part of the movie. Even though it didn't need to be there, I thought the fact that they did put it in there, I thought that made the film stronger.
Well, I think it was an inventive choice. Like, it was them actually thinking about the real world implications of time travel and what could go wrong. And creating this infinite time loop was one of the things that could go wrong. So bravo to them for that. All right. That concludes this episode. I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And I'm Jeff Markin. And we'll meet you at the drive-in. Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.